Hello and welcome to Zenjo's Tangle Tips and Techniques. Today I thought I'd show you how to draw Betweed. I've been drawing it a little bit more recently, and several of my students have said, oh, we struggle a little bit with it. So I thought I'd just take you through some sort of a simple introduction to Betweed, because it's a great tangle for fitting into all sorts of areas. Okay, so you can see here I've put in, this is a very simple bit of Betweed in a little triangular section here. So I'm going to pop that to the side and pop a tile down. So I'm just using a normal Zentangle tile. And I have my pencil here and my tortillon, and I'm going to use a black micron PN today. First thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to pop my dots and a border. It's always good practice to follow the Zentangle method. You know, those 8 basic steps of just having a little bit of gratitude, doing your dots, doing your border, so that you've got an area to fit it in. Next thing I'm going to do is add a string. Now I'm going to just do Betweed on this tile so that we can go over it and you can see what it looks like. So the string I'm going to do is a very simple cross string. So I'm going to go from corner to corner. You can see I'm turning my tile. Again, good practice to do. I'm now going to do a square from edge to edge, not from corner to corner. So we end up with a 8 sizes of string sections. Put my pencil to the side. So once you've got this section, you can do that in pencil. And from here we can just follow this along. I'm actually going to restate my pencil string with pen. Okay, you don't always have to do this, but I like doing this. Okay, so once I've got the string, obviously you could draw this instantly with pen, but sometimes I think it's quite nice to follow that Zentangle method of doing your string. Oops, a bit of a wibble wobble there. Doesn't matter. Those of you that know me know that I don't get fazed by having a little bit of a wobble with my pen. You know, there's no such thing as straight lines unless you've got a ruler, and we don't use rulers in Zentangle. So I now have those nice defined areas. So how do we start with Betweed? I'm going to look at just this triangular area, forget everywhere else. So Betweed is just simple lines. I say straight lines, but I do sometimes tend to put a very slight little curve of it on it. And I'm going to start on this line. So I'm going to come down a little way and I'm going to draw my line from here down to this point. So this is our first line, and you'll see I'll put a very, very slight curve on the top. Okay, so that's my first line. I then turn my tile very slightly, and now this is my starting line. So from the line, I draw from the line down to the point, and I keep alternating this from line to point. Turn your tile one stroke at a time, line to point, line to point. And you keep adding these repetitive lines, one after the other. Okay, and you can see it creates a sort of, I suppose it looks like a bit like woven or plaited look as you do them. As you get further down this section, you'll see that the lines sort of change a little bit. They get shorter and sometimes a little bit stubbier. That is a basic Betweed, and that's just in a triangular area. We'll look at it in a different section after we've done this one. So this is the basic, okay, and I'm going to do it again in this section, But within this section, what I'm going to do is, well, actually, no, I'm going to do exactly the same. So I'm going to start it here. So from line down to the point. And I'm going to do this all the way around. Well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do it on these four like this. And we'll see what happens with those. So line to a point, and once you start getting in a little bit of the flow of it, it starts sort of, oh yeah, I quite like doing this like this. I think oftentimes people can overthink a tangle, and then by overthinking it, your brain just switches off and you can't get it in your head as to, hang on a minute, what's it meant to look like? Just changing my pen there, it's a little bit blotchy on there. Okay, so again, on this section, so we're just looking at one section at a time. That's all you ever need to do with Zentangle, one section at a time. Line to point, line to point. And with any of these, any tangles, the best way to sort of feel comfortable with them is to do a mono tangle, just to do it again and again. There's nothing wrong with that at all. And in fact, what's lovely about it is that as you do it, if you keep doing it, you become more familiar with it. And by becoming more familiar with it, you can do it without having to think about it at all. And that's when we get that feel-good factor with Zentangle. So you can see I'm doing line to point, line to point. And we can carry on doing this exactly like this on each and every section. Okay, so I've done starting on my right hand side of this triangle. On all of them you can see right hand side, right hand side, right hand side. What I'm going to do now, so we've got those, and you can see if I do this in half, let me grab another tile, let me just pop that like that, and you've got this lovely sort of star shape happening. It's really, really gorgeous. Okay, what I'm going to do now, I'm going to do this one, I'm going to do them alternate. So I'm going to start again like I did with this from the right hand side. Okay, and keep doing like we've already done. Betweed is one of those tangles that form what are called meta patterns, M-E-T-A, meta patterns. And these are patterns that appear, but they're not what you originally drew. So this isn't what we originally drew. We drew this triangular section, but look at this star shape that's forming. Okay, and there's many tangles that do that. Paradox is one of them that forms a meta pattern, but many do. So we're looking at this section now, and you can see I've started on the right, from the right side of the line on each of these previous ones. This one I'm going to reverse it, and I'm just going to start it on the left hand side. Doing exactly the same, but I start on the left hand side. So I started on the right hand side of the triangle, the first one, and now I'm starting on the left hand side. And you will start to see a different, slightly different meta pattern form. You can see I'm putting a very slight curve on these lines. Okay, so that was on the left hand side. I'm going to start this one on the right, so you can see where that line starts, this first line of this section. I'm going to do the same, start there and bring it down from the right. So we've gone right, left, and now I'm doing starting on the right hand side again, and this creates a very slightly different star shape, and it's quite quick. You can see it's quite quick to fill a tile with this lovely shape. So now that was starting on the right. This one I'm going to start on the left. You can see it meets up with this one here. This is starting on the left. They both give a very, very similar final sort of image, similar but different, and it really doesn't matter. You can start them all in the same direction, or you can alternate them. There really isn't a problem with it at all. Okay, I'm going to just do that one down there as well. I don't actually count how many I do, but I could see that didn't look even. And that was just me. So now, okay, if I get my tile here, I pop this over the top, hide that side because one side is slightly different to the other because I'm showing you. So now, because I've alternated right to left in which lines I started, you've got a more even star shape beginning, but it's still a meta pattern. So there you can see it's slightly, very, very slightly different. It's really subtle, but I just wanted to show you that. So that is basic Betweed. Right, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to show you something else. So these were just straight lines, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to add weight to the ends of the lines. Okay, so it's known as weighting. So you're going to add a thickness to the ends of the lines. I'm going to show you it like this, where we've actually already drawn the Betweed, and then I'll show you how you can do it as you draw the Betweed. So let's look at one triangular section. Forget all the others, so you can go back to looking. There's your main first line. So this is your triangular section. So we're going to look at these alternate sections. And what I'm going to do is say, right, that's my first line. I'm going to just add a little bit of thickening to the line. It's in a very sort of slightly triangular end on the top of that line. Go down to the next line we drew, and on the top of the line, I'm just going to add a little bit of thickening. Okay, and you taper this in. I'm using a PN, which is a slightly thicker nib. If I've got a 01, it's very much finer, and you might get a slightly finer line. I alternate between using PNs, 01s, because they give a slightly different line strength. See, I'm just adding that weight. It's a weight of the line on the ends, and it starts changing what this tangle looks like. It gives it a little bit more strength. You don't have to do it. And there's on the tops of the lines, once you know, okay, you look at that line that you've drawn and you just say, okay. So you can add this weight afterwards. It's quite nice adding it afterwards because it's like a continuation of that repeating, doing the same action. So all you're having to think about is you've drawn your lines and now you can add your weight. So here's that first line. I can add my weight here and on here. And what you'll see is it gives strength and definition to the tangle. And I tend to add weight to quite a few tangles. And I'm going to do it on this one as well. So it marries up with that one. Can you see the weight now? When you do on this alternate one, you get sort of like a little triangular bit at the top where they both marry up and meet up. So there we are. So I'm hoping as I'm recording this, you're just hearing me because my dog Maisie is lying in her bed just next to my desk. She's snoring quite loudly. So I'm hoping it's not coming through. And if it is, welcome to my world. Okay. So I've added weight on, this time I've done it on half of that. So look at that, the difference between that that by just adding a little bit of weight. Okay, so I'm not going to weight this side, and we're going to look at shading, and I am going to come back and we're going to do adding weight as we draw it, but I'd just like to sort of shade this, then we can move on to another tile, another section. So you can keep shading fairly simple if you want. So add it, a good trick or a good tip is where lines all converge is a good place to think about adding some shade, because that's where they all come into a point. So using the side of my pencil, just added quite a lot of graphite there with my tortillon, soften it in a little circular move and taper this up, lifting the pressure of my tortillon so that it sort of lightens it. I'm keeping it dark down in the bottom there. Okay, so now you can see this meta pattern is sort of joined here, isn't it? I'm not looking at this one little triangular area. I'm going to do my shade just on this bit because I'm just wanting to do shade on this section for the moment. Again, where all those lines converge. And you can hear me blowing away little bits of paper fibre that are just being lifted as I tickle over the top of the tile with my tortillon. Oh, that's a lot of T's, isn't it? Tickle over the top of my tile. Those of you that know me know that Joe-isms come out quite often. So again, so we had the lines converging here, they've converged there. But look here, this lovely area here, and this is a bit like an Art Deco sort of plaque here. So I'm going to pop some graphite just at the bottom there. So make it nice and dark in the bottom. Soften it into place with just that little rotation of your tortillon, just with the side of it. And then I'm going to ease that graphite out away so it goes from dark grey to lighter grey up into the white so that it softens it right out. Okay, so that's the start of where you can put your shade just into where all those lines converge. So I'm going to do that on all those sections. Just taking your time. You know, shading is as important or as much part of your tangling as the actual line drawing is. So I'm hoping that once we've done this, you'll be able to see the difference between the weighted and shaded side. Okay, so that is very, very basic shading here. And you could do, if you wanted to, lines sort of converge here. So I'm treating this as a half a tile. Okay, and you can bring down shading from there as well. Okay, so you can do your shading very, very simply like that. Another way, so I'm now going to look at this area that we haven't weighted. I haven't added any weight to, but what we can do is we can add shade to these sections. So I'm going to start off with this section here. So that was one way of shading. Here's another way of shading. So what I'm going to do is underneath each of these, I'm going to pop a little line of graphite underneath that line, and I'm just going to soften it so that it stays quite dark close to that line. Turn my tile and underneath, so we're working underneath these lines. I'm going to pop a little bit of graphite there. You can see I'm pointing my pencil towards the line. I've got quite a nice sharp point on it, and we just soften that. And you can do that on all these, so just one at a time. Add your graphite, just a very thin line. I tend to be quite a strong shader because I like the image that you get when you're you see I put 2 lots of graphite down then. It's my habit of, you don't have to chop and change. Once you know where you're going to add your shade, you can put your graphite down all in one go and then use your tortillon. It saves you sort of tortillon pencil swapping all the time. Okay, and I'm just going to do one more little bit, and I'm going to do it counting this as one of the lines. I'm going to pop some graphite here. So what you're doing when you add graphite just under those lines, you start to accentuate that plaited folded look. So I'm going to do graphite under this line here and under this one. Oops, a little bit of an oops over the edge there. Doesn't matter, in the big scheme of things it will all blend in. Okay, so turn your tile. So with this you're just going to quietly add graphite underneath these lines. So what I'm doing now is I'm adding graphite to all those lines. The previous one I was doing it one at a time so that you could see. With this, so that I know where I'm going, I've done graphite underneath all those lines. Then I can change to my tortillon, and I can just very carefully soften it. You can see it doesn't take very long. This is one of my own cut tiles. It is from the Fabriano Tiepolo paper that official Zentangle tiles are made from. However, it is a very, very slightly different texture. So it does take the graphite really, really well, and you know, so when you're tangling, please use the best quality materials that you can. You'll get, it's sort of giving some credit to what you're doing, putting an importance upon what you're doing, and using the best quality materials means that you'll get the best quality result. You know, if you've got poor quality paper, you can still tangle on it. Yes, of course you can. But your visual result, and also your actual experience of when you're tangling, when you're drawing, won't be quite the same. So you can see you're going around adding this, and you can see how it looks quite different to the other side. So I'm just going to do this one side now. Okay. Betweed is one of those tangles. It's a headquarters tangle, Zentangle headquarters tangle, and I like headquarters tangles, and there are so many of them that we just don't use. So it's worth going back and having a look at them. Don't discard them. They're classic tangles that you can adapt and use again and again and again, and you don't have to continually learn new tangles. You know, we've got so many of them there, and they can create such beautiful images. Okay. So that is a very simple example of Betweed that I've done. We've done all starting on the right hand side with those triangles, then we've alternated right to left, shading on this side and weighting the lines where I've shaded where all the lines converge, and here I've shaded underneath the lines, and you get a slightly different look with each one. Okay, so that's one version of Betweed. Let's pop that aside, and well, no, I won't use that one, I'll use this one here. Another way of doing Betweed. Okay, I'm going to not draw dots and a border on this one. I'm going to get my pen, and I'm going to do a nice band here. So I'm going to take my pen, I'm going to sweep up. I'm not worried about it being a straight line. In fact, I'm going to make it very slightly curvy. Okay, So I've done a line along that way. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to divide this up with a little section like this, so you can add a little ribbon. You see what I've done on the end of there is I've just curved them round, so they just sort of curve at the ends, and it's like drawing like little columns. Whoops, there's another whoops, a bit of a wobble with my pen. So now you're going to end up with sections on this ribbon border of drawing here, and we're going to start by putting that betweed into these sections. Now we used triangles last time. This time we've got rectangular sections. So I'm going to start in this hole one. This one's sort of just cut off a little bit, and I'm going to start off by doing one here. Okay, this time I'm going to add the weight as I draw it. Okay, so I've drawn the weight there. I can now add another one that comes in from that side. Add the weight, and I can just keep adding from the line down to the point. Same principle. If you don't say anything else, just keep saying line to point, line to point. Okay, and so you end up with a nice sort of column of your betweed, folded, plaited, woven lines. Once you get the technique of how to draw betweed, you will be able to add it to all sorts of sections. I'm going to bring this down here. Now, what I'm noticing when I'm doing this is I've got quite a large area that needs something in it, and when I've done this one, I'll show you what we're going to do. So you can draw almost any string, any area, and you can fit betweed into it. It's adaptable. You just adjust the length of your lines to fit that section. Can you see how I'm drawing the line and adding the weight as I go along? So these sections seem to be a little bit fat for me. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add another one that just comes in here. And you can always do that. That's just going in there. Okay. And if you want to, you can do another one that just comes in here. There's no problem with that. I'm going to do another one that just tucks in there. Okay, so let's try this again. So I'm going to start up here. So I'm going to count this as my line, the top of my line, and this is my point. So I'm going to come down to there, like so. Start on the line, down to the point, and just flick my pen over the top of that line to add that weighting. If you add a little curve, right, can you see the little curve at the top? You've got that section where you can just straighten it off. So curve it round. So there's a slight adaptation I've done there. Curve it round, and you've automatically got a section that you can fill with ink. Okay, here that's gone a little bit thick or left a white space. I'm just going to add another line, and you can see it works quite nicely there. Okay, so you could fill a tile with a variation of betweed in a random string, so you've got wonderful sections that you can just fill it in. So you know, when you think we've done a starburst one with a cross string, now we're just doing this one with, I'm going to bring this one down there, with this straight ribboned string. Okay. And I just add another one in there. It starts coming together, doesn't it? Isn't it amazing? I mean, that's the fantastic thing about Zentangle. Isn't it? It just sort of creates it in front of you. So you can see by doing that now, I've done them all the same way, but you can see you're still getting that, like these lovely fan shapes. So I'm going to do this one over here now. Bring your pen down, very slight curve at the top, point to line. Just enjoy drawing this one line at a time. That's the most important thing. Be comfortable with what you're drawing. You don't put that pressure on yourself where you feel you've got to do something different. Just enjoy actually what you're doing at this moment in time. Okay, so here I just have to guesstimate where I might have some betweedy lines there. What I'm going to do with this is I'm just going to put another aura next to this line. Okay, so I'm going to aura next to this line here, like so, and I'm going to aura here as well. Okay, so we've got Betweed going that way. Shall we see what we can do with Betweed down in this section now? So what I'm doing is I'm actually teaching you how I tangle. I haven't got this planned. I know what I want to teach you, but I haven't planned this tile we're going to do. So I'm looking at this and saying, okay, we're doing Betweed, so what can we do? I'm going to draw a line down this way. I'm going to draw a line this way. So I'm just going to, it's almost like doing a border, but it's done in ink rather than in pencil. I'm now going to add 2 lines coming in a starburst, like so. Now, if you remember I'm going to bring back the original tile. On this tile, where we had the triangle, we started at the top of the triangle, at the point, going from wide to line, or line to point, sorry, wide point to narrow point. With this one, I'm going to start it the other way round. I'm going to start it here, and I'm going to go from port line here, from this wide bit down to here. I'm going to go to this bit and this bit and this bit and see what happens. This is a play, okay? So we're going to go wide point here and bring this in. Wide point here, bring this in. Wide point. So you can see if you're doing it slightly different, this doesn't give you Betweed. So that is where you get lines, but you get a different look. Okay, I'm going to turn it round again. Doesn't matter, because what we can do is on this side we go wide point down to the narrow. So we're going line to point, line to point, line to point, line to point. Okay. So that then indicates whether it actually creates this plaited look or not. You will know. So always come from the line to the point. I'm adding my weight afterwards. Sometimes it's really nice to make it quite curvy, and let's see if we can make it quite curvy when we get to the other side. So here I'm going to, this one I started on the right hand side. I'm going to start this on the left hand side now, so I'm going from the line down to the point, line down to the point. Okay, and you just alternate, and you get in quite a flow of doing these. Okay, I'm going to add the weight, so I'm adding a little bit. I find it easiest to add it on the top of the line. It doesn't matter, you can add it underneath if you want, but with any of this weighting, play with it. Don't feel you've got to get it exactly right the first time. You know, give yourself a chance to sort of feel familiar with it. So this one didn't work, did it, as a Betweed, but it still looks really, really cool. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add some weight on the top of the line, on the top of the line, on the top of the line. So I'm just going to accentuate the tops of these lines a little bit. Okay. To thicken them, to darken them, you can see I go back just to make them a little bit stronger. Okay, and I'm going to add, turn this back, and I'm going to add weight on the bottoms. I've turned it so it actually becomes the tops of those lines. Weight on the tops, on the tops. So even if you find, oh no, I've done the line not going in the right direction, you can save them and make them make them their own thing, really. Okay, so I'm going to do one more, just bringing this down this way, do another square corner, and this time I'm going to just leave it nice and big. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to really try and curve this line. So I'm going to start down here and I'm going to curve this down to here, and I'm going to curve this right down to here. So I hope what I'm showing you is there's a lot of flexibility in this tangle. You can do it with nice big, nice sort of straight lines, absolutely, or you can start adding it in a real big curve. You can see I'm having to turn my tile here so that I get my hand in the right direction to be able to do it. Okay, so here, and eventually the lines sort of flatten out. Okay, that's another nice big one, so I can add my weight to the lines here on the top. You know, I know a lot of Zentangle videos online have music, and I thought about it. I made people laugh in class the other day, apart from the fact that I don't really know how to add music yet. It's on my list of learning things. I think it's quite nice just to have a quiet video where we're just looking at what we're doing and saying, okay, this is quite nice, doing this just like this, and having a little chit chat. So there's quite a lot going on there. It's not necessarily a tile that I would do in terms of my tangling, but I wanted to show you that you can just keep adding these lines, and from this we've got this and this. Let's go back to this first section we did. Going back to this the first lot we did, where the lines, the shading, where the lines all converge, here and here. Let's add a bit of weight, a bit of graphite. Get my words all muddled up now. Okay, so this goes up there. Soften it here, and you can see I'm just teasing it up the side of the line a little way. There you go. And a little bit here. What this will do is it will accentuate that first little ribbon that we put in place. and they're like fans coming out. Even though this is a section we did, what you end up seeing is this, which is another meta pattern, a pattern that you didn't draw but appears when you draw the tangle next to each other. Okay, let's do this here and here. I'm going to put graphite down on all the sections because I know where I'm going to put it, where those lines all converge. Okay, and lighten it up so that it stays dark at the points, because that means that they go deeper. If you add in the shade, it's where it goes deeper. And pop that way, like so. Where all the lines, always say, oh, where do the lines converge? That's where they converge. And you can see they start forming this lovely fan shape. So I hope what you'll be able to do is go, oh yeah, when I draw a string, maybe I'll put a little bit of Betweed in here and adapt it, have a play, try different sort of shapes and different areas that you can add it in. Okay. If you want to, you can add a little bit underneath that weighting, like so. By doing that, that will accentuate that dark center zigzag that you've created with that weight. There's so many variations that you can do with this. But you'll be able to watch this video again and go, oh, hang on, what did you say there? Yeah, oh, I could add it underneath the lines. I can add it on the on the weighting to accentuate that, because you can see it's made that nice and dark. It gives it that depth. Or you can just add it where the lines all converge. Do this one here. And what I'm going to be doing soon is I'm going to be creating some videos with where we actually can tangle a whole tile together, and which will be fun. So if you have any suggestions of tangles that you'd like to know how we can combine them into a tile, just drop me a little message. You can email me at info@zenjo.uk. and or pop me a little message on this video. Okay, let's go back to this one that we did here. So I did these to show you that actually it didn't work that way, did it? But it still looks okay, so you can save it. So here's where most of the lines converge down the center here. Okay, and I'm going to spread that graphite out. So I've made it quite dark in that top point. I'm going to spread it out down the sides there. Okay. Oops, going off the screen a little bit. Now let's go back to these ones. So we've got triangle here. So where the lines converge, here and here. With the side of your pencil, you're adding that graphite. So very gently tease it out, keeping it dark where you want that depth, that visual depth. Blowing those little bits of paper fibre out the way. So isn't it amazing what happens when you start adding a bit of shade? All right. So that's where the lines converge. Going that way and this way. I think this tortillon seems to be making an awful lot of noise. So how can a tortillon make an awful lot of noise? I'm not actually rubbing very hard, but it's quite noisy paper, this. Which sounds really funny. I mean, only in Zentangle can you say you've got noisy paper. Okay, so you've got those there. I'm going to do these ones down here. So I'm really looking at that almost upside down there. So this was the very big one, so it's very spaced out. I think sometimes Betweed probably likes slightly smaller spaces. But you could use it as you could do a big betweed and then fill in between the sections with another tangle, something like tipple. So I brought those up there, and now on this one I'm going to, because there's such big lines, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do that, add that graphite underneath those lines. So I'm making sure you've got quite a nice point on your pencil so that you've got a sharp line. I'm going to go down underneath this one now, underneath these, underneath there. Okay. And we can soften this out, keeping it close to the line. You don't want to sort of fill that whole section with grey. You want it to be quite close to, so that it visually causes it to look like it overlaps or they tuck underneath each other. Okay. And then the only thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to add a little bit underneath here. Okay. So what we've done there is some simple variations of Betweed, and so we've got Betweed that's done in a starburst, either all the same direction. So here I started always on the right hand side, and on this side we alternated right left, and we get a very slightly different image when we do that. On this one we drew a ribbon, divided it with those nice little columns, and we had little sort of rectangular sections to put that Betweed in, where you've got these lovely fan shapes. Here I've got made 3 triangular areas. This way I showed you that if you go from the wide point down to the narrow point here, it doesn't really create a Betweed. But if you change it and go from the narrow point, so the line here, down to the point, you get this lovely interlocking of the lines, and the same with that. So there we are. That is a very sort of brief introduction to the tangle Betweed. So please do go away, enjoy it, and I'd love to see what you create, and I'll see you next time. Bye.